looking forward to our conversation today. My name is Amina Siddiqui Aini, and I live in near San Francisco Bay Area in California. I also serve on the National Committee for the Department of Peace Building campaign that calls for, as most of you know, for a cabinet level U.S. Department of Peace Building. And a lot of exciting stuff and a lot happening at that front. And the bill just got reintroduced earlier this month, and I can give updates later.
That'd be great. Yeah, we want to hear that. Great. Welcome, Amina. Okay. Susan.
Thank you.
Hello. Welcome, Susan.
I got a bit cold. I'm Susan, and I am in Turkey right now, Istanbul. I came here for a peace conference sponsored by Rotary. They dedicated a center here to train anyone who wants to get another master's degree to become an international ambassador for peace. So it's international studies. And then after you complete the 2 years, then you're going to another country to help out. But Rotary pays for everything. They pay for room and board and school. And then I just took an extra 6 days and just been exploring mosques and museums and you name it, Spice Market.
Yeah. Istanbul's a great city, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a great city. And I'm in a hostel, so I've had big discussions with people from Iran and Bolivia and Chile and Turkey and Morocco, you name it. Japan, China.
Yeah, it's a very global city.
Yeah,
and have you met the cats? Have you met the cats of Istanbul?
Oh yeah, they're all over the place.
Yeah, cats run that city. It's amazing.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah. I think it's
we're actually planning to go there.
Very cool.
Yeah, so this summer a family trip there, our first time there, so really looking forward to it.
Yeah, you must go to Ephesus and I'm sure you'll figure that out.
Have you been to Ephesus this trip, Susan?
No.
Okay.
It's been really cold, snow, rain. Yeah.
Okay, well, thanks. Anyway, we'll hear a bit later maybe about the Rotary thing. Priscilla, do you want to introduce yourself? Welcome.
Oh, yes. Hi. I'm Priscilla Prutzman. I'm located up in Hastings on Hudson, just north of New York City, and work with Creative Response to Conflict. Nice to see everybody. Sean, I haven't seen you for a long time. Susan and Thomas, I've seen more recently, and great to see everybody else. One of the most exciting things I'm working on is a 4-credit conflict resolution education course at a high school in New York City. And we're really hoping to spread this widely for all over New York and other places too. We already have interest in about 6 schools that want to try to do it next year. And we have a middle school that is interested in adapting it to middle school curriculum. But the new thing is it's for credit. So, we haven't had a 4-credit course like this before for students. So I'm very excited about that. So good to see everybody.
Right. Well, we will come on to that and talk about it a bit later. That's exciting. Thanks. Nicolette, can you unmute and introduce yourself quickly? Hello. Still didn't unmute. Got to hit that button. Wonder if I can do it. No, I can ask you to do it.
Yeah.
Hi.
I just kind of like to keep up tabs with what you're doing, and I read a lot and see if I could connect to anybody or you guys. So I don't know that I have anything to report. I'm still in Athens. And
you're in Athens.
Yeah. I attend some webinars to learn to help people for grant writing. So I try to, but I'm between Athens and El Paso, the border. And so I'm having to kind of keep up with everything a little.
Yeah. I read there were some very big demonstrations in Athens. Is that true? Was there some demonstrations in town?
Over the corruption over the Tempe train disaster? Yeah, and they
Well,
had
I just
strike-
saw a headline like 1 million people marching in Athens or something.
Yeah.
What was that
there
about?
You know, the train disaster? I know you
Yeah.
have a Greek person. Well, it's the 1 year anniversary and they feel it's a government cover up about how the train disaster happened. A minister resigned. You know, they had something similar with the fires in Maki in 2018. You know, it's like this. So they have a lot of solidarity here. It's kind of a collectivist culture more than American. And, they even had strikes, so the airplane flights,
Right.
everyone had to schedule their airplane flights out of Athens that day. Yeah, that's all it was, commemoration
Okay.
of one. And there's only one survivor and he's still in a coma in Milan.
Yeah, shocking accident, shocking. Yeah. Okay, well, thank you. Lovely to hear from you. Dr. Mishra, can you unmute and quickly introduce yourself? Hello. Hi.
Hi, good evening. I'm
Welcome.
Kaushala Mishra from Mumbai, Bombay. I'm a scientist and my interest is in science for society. Therefore, I have interest for developing peace in the world. So most of the time we are looking for how science can be applied to society for the benefit of society. Just 2 days ago, I gave a big talk on how science can mitigate the climate crisis, and in many ways, like zero carbon, and then reducing the natural gases in the atmosphere, and so on. So I continue interacting with scientists and intellectuals, academicians, and also social workers. And in the local colleges and universities, very often I'm delivering lectures on how science can be useful for society. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Very important. We'll come back to those themes shortly. It's a big topic. So look, welcome. And we'll see that there should be a couple of others joining us, but we'll make a start anyway. So the first item on the agenda really is what the ongoing war in Russia and Ukraine, and watching the geopolitics of it all, the Trump administration reversing Russia's position hitherto, reversing America's position, and it's been very bizarre to watch all this. I don't know what people think. Jeffrey Sachs was giving a talk in the European Parliament recently, of saying peace is needed. But the question is, does that mean that one just grants everything that Putin wants in Ukraine? Is that what Trump's going to do? It's quite shocking, really. And then we have the fact of the revelation that Trump may well have been recruited as a Russian agent called Krasnov way back. So there are people now in the media, Byline Times and elsewhere, saying, no, Trump is actually a Russian asset. And so we have this very bizarre, I've never known anything like it in history, actually, unbelievable, bizarre thing that the Russians have seemed to have planted an asset who's seized power in the US. And it doesn't seem they can do anything about it. So I don't know, I'm looking forward to our comments from our American friends. If I was American, I'd be organizing meetings in Congress. I'd be exploring the legal remedies because, if in Britain, if we outed an MP or something was definitely a spy working for an alien government, there's such a thing as treason. It's against the law. So we would arrest that person. But in America, I don't know. It's like you're all frightened rabbits staring into the headlights. What on earth's going on? So anyway, feedback, comments, please. Amina, why don't you bat first? Tell us how it looks from California.
Where do we start? It's just One crazy initiative after the other, to be honest with you, we're exhausted. And quite frankly, I think there's probably a strategy to throw all these craziness out there and distract from the real criminality. And like you mentioned, one of the things that boggles my mind and the fact that as a president of the United States, there's a Trump and Melania Trump Bitcoin in the market that's they're making billions of dollars on that. That's an extreme conflict of interest for a president of a country to have, and based on US law, and it's flat out illegal. So there's a lot of stuff like that that's happening, and all these things that are thrown at the media who can't keep up with, they forget to talk about those things that are, like you said, there's so many things that we would consider not necessarily legal in terms of like what's happening with the federal employees, for example, that all these federal employees are being let go in the Social Security, which is the backbone of the American people and the elderly in America. About 50% is projected to be cut, and so you can imagine what's going to happen. And so with on the geopolitical, yeah, absolutely, you know, the just to shift the policy, and it just doesn't make any sense to just the direction he's going everywhere. And now I'm even hearing that well, he said that he's going to take over the Bagram airport in Afghanistan, which could imply that he's thinking about reoccupying Afghanistan again, and from there to occupying Canada or making Canada one of the states of the United States. And where do we start? You know, like everything just, I mean, it just doesn't make any sense, to be honest with you. And I don't know if part of it is distraction and just talk to distract from the Bitcoins and truly illegal financial things that are happening in the background. Or hopefully, I hope that that's just rhetoric, just to distract from what he's really doing. But so far it seems to be working that way, that, you know, the media is not focusing on so many other financial illegal things that are happening, and just hard to keep up. It's mind-boggling. It's just incredible. You know, I think there should be millions of people on the street, really. And you don't, I mean, it was great that because of Gaza that happened, and when George Floyd situation happened, people went on the streets, but you know, you don't see that much of it now. And at some point that has to happen. I mean, people have to fight back.
Yeah. Well, thanks for that kind of report. I mean, I found there are some people following all this. I find Thomas Hartman's report on Substack. It's a daily thing, and he is following all this stuff and documenting it in real time. I also find Claire Belinsky's Substack articles really on the detail excellent. She's a very, you know, brilliant young intellectual with a PhD from Oxford University, and she lives in Paris. She's an American though, and she's monitoring everything that's happening in detail. She's also she's a psychotherapist, and she has done a mental health evaluation of Trump, and she's diagnosed him in one of her best pieces as a pathological narcissist. And she uses the term, you know, medically, for someone that doesn't care about other people, that just acts for their own interest and has no empathetic intelligence for others. So slashing all these workers and everything you're saying, to a pathological narcissist, it doesn't matter, because they literally can't feel the pain they're causing to other people. Slashing the USAID budget again, I've had people reaching out to me, you know, their livelihoods and all that are being affected. And also, USAID has built up lots of programs and trust in many countries around the world, in Africa and elsewhere. And that all goes and evaporates. And Russia is very happy to hoover up everything. So what America, you know, but a pathological narcissist doesn't care about any of that. And coupled the fact that he's actually been working with Putin behind the scenes, intellectually, if that's the right word, he's wedded to the Putin agenda, which is geopolitics is run by power and might and wealth. Putin is like the Trump of America, the richest guy in Russia, and he's like owns everything. So what I'm reading is that Trump has modeled himself on that. What I find so scandalous is that, the people in Congress are not speaking out about this, and the Democratic Party, are not making enough. I mean, they are doing some things, but I feel they could be doing more. I don't know if anyone wants to comment on that. Welcome, by the way, Bharti, you've joined us from India, right? Just say hello, greetings.
Hello and namaste to everybody.
Yeah.
Good to see you all. Hi, Suzanne.
It's been a
Yeah.
while since you joined us, but I know your
Oh,
father
Patricia.
sadly passed away. It's very sad. And you've been off recuperating, but I hope you're back with us now. And we've just started we're discussing the situation in America. And I don't know what you think from India. Have you been watching American politics? What do you make of it all? What does the Indian press say?
Yeah, Thomas, I'm not much into this these days.
Sure.
So
We'll pass.
won't be
Okay,
able
we
to
won't
comment on
get the
this
Indian.
much, but
Sure. It's been quite interesting to watch those of us
yeah,
that
I
have
think
links to North America.
yeah.
Priscilla, would you like to comment? Because I know you're near New York. This is a guy from New York. What do you make of it in New York State? Can you have him
Well,
back, please?
he may be from New York, but he is not welcome in New York. People
Yeah, he
really
was.
like him in New York, and I mean, they're all of those. To me, Trump is interested in power and building things and money, of course, and all of those buildings along the West Side Highway. All the people got together and agreed to take his name off the building. That's how much they couldn't stand him anymore. So, I mean, I feel very fortunate to live in this area because I don't have to deal with talking with people who are Trumpers. I think we have two people in the town I live in that are pro-Trump. And, most of New York State is very Democratic, although there certainly are more upstate Trump people. But to me, looking at Trump, you kind of think the opposite of what he says, and that's the reality. Because he everything that he says is untrue, and he doesn't even care about being strategic. He just throws stuff out all the time, and quite often it contradicts itself. I do think there are people going to the streets. I've seen a lot of newscasts of lots and lots of people protesting all over the United States, all over the world. Rachel Maddow on NBC talks every night at 9 o'clock in the New York area, and she shows all the demonstrations, and she shows, Bernie's speeches, the person from Vermont who's really so articulate about exactly what's wrong. He's really, really good. Today is the day where nobody is supposed to buy anything from anybody. It's like a boycott. So we're all staying home and not going shopping and not buying anything. And we were all instructed if we needed gas to get it the day before. I think the economic boycott idea is important, and people are starting to send out lists of companies that supported the 25 thing, and places like Costco, for instance, who refused to get rid of their DEIB. And a lot of people are just standing up to that and saying, we're going to keep our DEIB committee. And I'm on some DEIB committees myself.
For those that don't know, can you explain what DEIB
diversity, equity, and belonging. Sometimes they call it diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice. So that when you hear the DEI part, that's what he's basically telling colleges, organizations, if you have a DEI component, you're never going to get funding. So he's economically boycotting the opposite direction, essentially. So,
And this is legislation passed by these institutions to give people in the margins a chance. It's from what
Yes,
I understand, DEI is
exactly.
intended to help people from disadvantaged backgrounds,
right.
you know, a bit of a fair chance.
Yes.
And he
yes,
doesn't like that, right?
No, he wants to go back to the all white, all men boys club kind of idea, and that is in fact what's happening. I mean, you can see it. You can see it on the news. You can see it in reporting. It's you know, he wants to go back to erase all of the social justice initiatives that happened and start
which he
where we
calls all
were.
lefty propaganda. So
Yeah.
just inform us, because we're all very ignorant of this. But am I right in thinking his dad, who gave him all the money and started him off, his dad was basically from the same crowd, a sort of white racist who had a run-in with you know, like he used to stick signs on rooms he rented out, no blacks, no Jews, didn't he? Trump
Yeah.
Senior.
He
So
was in the real estate business and was always very guilty of redlining. That's that term which means only people within a certain area could buy. It excluded anybody of color basically from buying real
and
estate.
that's what Trump was brought up with as a kid.
Yes,
I think that's
yes.
normal.
And he was
That's fine.
also brought up with Roy Cohn, the person who was the lawyer. He learned from Roy Cohn how to spew misinformation, you know, and how the lawyers could turn anything around and change anything. And occasionally you'll hear the term, "Where's my Roy Cohn?" But Roy Cohn was a gay man who was very closeted under the J. Edgar Hoover period, and where anybody who was left wing was thrown out. It grossly affected intellectuals and artists and the whole movie industry. People lost
in the during the McCarthy era.
and that's his model, you know. And I think we do need to ask the question, what is he getting? I mean, when you see these pictures, that he's literally bowing to Putin. So Putin must have something on him. A lot of people have a lot of things on him. He's done so many illegal things and he's, you know, I mean, hundreds and hundreds of lawsuits. I don't know how he can possibly exist with that many lawsuits. It's like that's all he must do is look at his lawsuits.
I mean, can I just shed some light on this as a political scientist from where I'm sitting? People that think in that criminal way and use power and might, and also threats and occasionally violence, their solution, it's what I call the Caesar solution. Julius Caesar was in trouble. Just to let you know, he conquered Gaul here in France, and he slaughtered a couple of million people in cold blood. He was a war criminal. He would go around doing what Putin's trying to do to Ukraine, capturing one town after another, and then killing all the males and enslaving the women. And eventually the Senate in Rome, backed up by Pompey, called him to answer charges for war crimes because he was giving a bad name to the Roman Republic with all this. You know, they'd authorized him to be the general in Gaul, but not to be a war criminal, right? So they called him to come to Rome and give an account of himself and face punishment. So what Caesar did is he thought, to hell with that. And he broke the one rule that generals weren't allowed to do, which is he took an army to Rome. You were supposed to disband your army and no weapons allowed, you know, and he actually marched on Rome, sacked the Senate, arrested people that had tried to punish him, and seized supreme power as a dictator. And that was the Caesar solution. And other dictators have done that. Mussolini did that. His famous march on Rome was a sort of replica of that. And it seems to me that's what Trump has done, because all, you know, he's got so much to answer for, and not least all the stuff about alliance with Putin, and was he part of the, you know, what was he doing there? So his solution is to just take down every bulwark of the American Constitution and state and terrorize them into obedience. So I'm just offering that as that's a kind of historical insight into the strategy. The question is, of course, like, what does one do about it? You know, and I think you're right to highlight Bernie Sanders. I think you mentioned Bernie Sanders. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, has everyone listened to his speeches on the floor of the Senate he's been giving last couple of weeks? I mean, he's got a superb intellect, and he's an elder of the American political scene. And it's such a tragedy that he didn't stand against Trump. I think he would have won. You know, the rich don't like him because he's a socialist, but he's a left Democrat like Roosevelt. And his analysis of what Trump's doing is just pretty good, as far as I can tell.
It is very good.
And I just hope that. So I've got another question before we move on, which is, okay, so I've talked to some friends who have just got back from Kyiv in Ukraine, and they said that the word on the street in Kyiv is that Putin has some compromise on Trump. So that's why he's acting like he is, right? And that makes total sense. The you know, the evidence is that is the case. Now, constitutionally, that's a problem because, you know, I believe there ought to be a new office set up in democratic states, like a whistleblower confidential service. So if I am president and I know a foreign power's got compromise on me, I should be able to go to the office of whistleblowing.
He fired them. They did have a whistleblower for the government.
Yeah.
He's meeting with Zelensky right now. And Zelensky's willing to give some of the rare minerals, but he said a lot of the land that has it is in Putin's hands now. So I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, yes, he was shocking. He was sacking, deliberately going for people that are supposed to be the protectors and bulwarks of the Constitution. But I mean, I've got a question mark for the American citizens on this call. Like I said before, if this was happening in Britain, there was a prime minister who was in bed with Russia, we would sack the guy and put him to trial, because we have a next level up. We have a monarch who has the ultimate supreme power. They can do that. They can sack a prime minister. You don't have that. And I mean, I'm just thinking, can't an American citizen, or let's say a group of 100 got together, bring out a private prosecution against Trump for treason? Like, the guy's an espionage guy. It's an illegal thing. It's an offense. And just sue him, which is, he loves courts. Take him to court for espionage and make him defend himself in court. You know,
he's already got the Supreme Court wired. They seem to support him too much.
So you're saying that the courts are entirely in his hands and couldn't
he
be
chose them. Yeah, he chose. Yeah, it's stacked up against or in his honor or his favor.
Well, he has a majority. Yeah. Well, yes.
And if people start protesting like crazy, he won't hesitate to call the National Guard.
That's a tragic but possibly accurate description. Sean, do make your comment. How do you see it from Ireland?
Yes, thanks, Thomas. I won't stay on it long because I know the American contribution has been very good. But from a European perspective, the peace movement has a problem with this, because Trump is right when he said to the Europeans, 3 years that war has been, well, since the invasion, because the war has been going on since 2014, and you haven't lifted a finger diplomatically to try and do anything to stop it, only pour arms into Ukraine. So from a peace perspective, Trump is now saying what the peace movement in Europe was saying for the last 3 years, there will have to be negotiations. So we have a problem because now we're on Trump's side. And given all what we're listening about what he's up to in the States, it's an issue. It's a complicated issue for the European peace movements. in relation to Ukraine, and not in relation to Gaza, but in Ukraine. Because he's now saying what the peace movement was saying that Congress in Vienna about 2 years ago, for all the major peace organizations, try to promote a solution to it, because there will have to be a solution. And the British Prime Minister, the French Prime Minister has gone over, but they still haven't. And now there's a major emergency meeting tomorrow, is it, or Sunday? The British Prime Minister is called to put forward some proposals to counter Trump. Well, Trump has got he's got there first, so that's just the problem. I think that the Europeans have with that some of the stuff he's doing probably is maybe it's in Russia's interest, but it's also in the interest of Europe to stop that war before it spreads much.
Yeah, well, thanks for that insight. And I mean, I would say some European peace activists would be inclined to support what Trump has done in that or said. I think others would be more skeptical. But let's move on. It's the next part of the agenda, really. Let's talk about European security, how this impacts Europe, and what I mean. Both Macron and Starmer have just been off to meet him. There's now talk about Trump being invited to come to London to meet King Charles. He's had an official letter inviting him. A lot of people in Britain are very anti that. They're very anti-Trump and think that's, there'll be street marches against it. I actually think it's probably quite a good idea if he has a private audience with King Charles, because Charles might be able to talk some sense into him. He's an environmentalist. He must be absolutely distraught at pretty much everything Trump stands for. But Trump might just be awed by the palace and the whole protocols and all that he might actually listen. So that's, I actually think that meeting should go ahead, because it's about educating. We've got to somehow educate Trump into statecraft and diplomacy and world affairs. I mean, I've got another question. This is because somebody mentioned climate change earlier in the introduction. And I mean, how's this for one of the elements behind Trump's election is that he's now cancelling all the environmental safeguards. He's now scrapping all the kind of, he's now giving a free hand back to the oil industry to do what it wants, as if he's a complete climate change denial person. So a lot of his money and support has come from the oil industry, hasn't it? And I read that all the oil industry companies now, they're scrapping their commitments to green energy and they're all going to just go back to business as usual. So, and that's why he's chumming away with people in Saudi Arabia. His best friend is, the Saudi Arabian hatchet guy that cut up his opponent into little bits in the Turkish embassy. These are the kind of people that are his friends. So, I mean, it seems to me that's another element to this. And from a European perspective, that's very retrograde. It's like a blowback against what I thought we'd agreed with the Paris Agreement and climate change and so on, is an issue. So I don't know, does anyone want to comment on that? Dr. Mishra, you were talking about climate change to a lecture recently. What do you make of Trump's denialism about this?
Yeah, well, I must say that it's very unfortunate, but at the same time, I would like to point out, even in his first term, he was against climate questions. And he was telling there is no climate problem in the world. And these are some people with vested interest who are creating this whole problem. So in general, I feel the people of America have ignored this fact. And now he's free to go and do anything against this climate issue, which will be dangerous anyway, which will be disastrous for people in years to come. But 4 years, I think he has a license now to do the way he would like to do. So this is
and the forces
unfortunate.
behind him. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Julie, do you want to comment here? We have a Swedish visiting expert in, environmental science on the call. Do you want to comment, Julie? What do you feel about this?
Oh, you can't even see me. No, I don't think I have anything specific to add. I'm just agreeing to what has been already said. Yeah, he wasn't a supporter when he was in the first time, and obviously not now. So yeah.
It's worrying. Yeah. Okay, thanks. Yes, so from the European perspective, I just want to add a few little details. So I attended a meeting at the Harvard International Politics School. They have an annual lecture on actually nuclear weapons and policy, which I attended. And the lecturer was Dr. Dmytro Kuleba, who is the former foreign minister of Ukraine. He was the youngest ever Ukrainian minister, and he's a very intelligent young man, extraordinary man, who's now, he has a doctorate. He is now in a kind of, he's a part-time, research assistant at the Belfer Center in Harvard University, and he spoke about his overview of this whole war and how it started and what happened. He was the foreign minister when Russia attacked Ukraine 3 years ago. And basically, he was saying that, Russia under Putin has one goal and one only, which is to utterly destroy and eradicate the Ukrainian state as such. That is his military goal, it's his social and his political and economic goal. And that anyone that thinks otherwise just doesn't know anything about Russian and Ukrainian history. That's where Putin is coming from. His mission is to destroy the idea of an independent Ukrainian nation. And he will do whatever it takes to do that. So it was, it's very disturbing to hear this. But it seems to be that is the case. And Lavrov, I think, has a lot of blood on his hands because he's backed Putin in this strategy right from day one, using, as somebody said, false intelligence, like a scattergun of false stuff that gets everybody chasing the wrong way, So the question is, and it is a question of soul searching to the European peace movement, right? Because I've been on various Zoom calls with people who would be peace activists in a normal state of the world. And it's a brilliant quote I've got somewhere that neutrality does not mean collusion. Kuleba actually quoted this from some diplomat somewhere, I can't remember where, that there's a difference between neutrality and then there's actually colluding with the state's aggression eradicating another state. At what point does the sacred cow of neutrality slip over into collusion? Are we really, as fellow Europeans, I'm living in France, I'm a British voter, are we really going to sit by and watch if the Russian army, eradicate the entire Ukrainian nation? They would arrest people like Kuleba, they would arrest Zelensky, they would probably torture and kill them. They've already chased out 3 or 4 million Ukrainians out of the country. Are we prepared to watch that? Is that what neutrality means? Is that what the peace movement should be calling for? I don't think so, no. I think that, and I've said this before, I think there should be a 2-track approach to European peace and security. On the one hand, I think that one has to help the Ukrainians self-defend. I think it's the right under cosmic law, under Druid law, under Muslim law, under every law, Christian law as well. People who've been attacked and are being beaten up have the right of self-defense. And there's nothing in the peace thinking of humanity that says that's not the case. On the other hand, I also think that there should be a double track of peace initiatives, negotiations, because it's not in the interests of Russia, all this stuff. And this is why I've written to the Irish Prime Minister suggesting that he shouldn't weaponize Ireland. I think it's wrong to turn Ireland into yet another aircraft carrier like Britain. Let Ireland stay neutral. I don't want it in NATO. I want it to be the peacemaker of Europe. I want them to have a European mediation service based in Dublin. I've been calling for this for years. And I think that would be a much better contribution that Ireland could make. So they could be the peace voice of Europe, the conscience. Let the other guys, help do their fighting stuff. Maybe that twin track approach might succeed. I don't know. What do people think about that? What any comments from any other Europeans on the call? Sean, you seem to be the appropriate person to respond.
Thanks very much. No, I don't want to take up the whole thing on the European, but I think what I was trying to say is that Trump came in and started talking about peace. But the reason he could do that was the leaders in Europe ignored peace for 3 years. They were afraid of the word peace. Now, what was that about? So they gave the opportunity to someone like Trump to come in and say, he's the peacemaker. He is negotiating a possibly end to the war. So that opportunity was given to him because the leaders in Europe, the French leader, the British leader, the German leader, they were afraid to talk about peace. From a peace perspective, I think that's disastrous.
Yeah, sure.
Throwing weapons into a war situation, and they would not countenance 1 ounce of diplomacy. I mean, from my point of view, it's the same, and that argument that you're making, transfer it to Israel. Israel has every right to defend itself.
Well, hang on. There's such a thing as due proportionality.
Well, that's a very I support Clausewitz in war. If you go to war, you go to win. Morality goes out the window. But don't say, "Oh, you can bomb this one, you can't bomb this person, you can bomb the other." If you go to, and if you support war, don't be then saying, "Oh, you can't go to win." Israel has a right. If they feel like that they're existentially threatened by Hamas, they must eliminate Hamas. That's their right under defensive protocols. So,
well, I tell you what, can we just pause that, because that's on the agenda, Gaza Hamas. Can we wait till we come to that? I'm very happy to talk about that.
Well, I'm just transferring the same.
Just stick with the Europe thing and let's finish that first.
Yeah, okay. Well, I know that's what I'm saying. The gap is there in Europe. The European leaders have disgraced themselves in relation to the war in Ukraine because they could not do the twin track that you're talking about, and they should have done it. They should have imported weapons if they wanted to, but also developed a possible way of stopping the war, and they haven't done that.
Yeah, thank you. No, I mean, just one little comment and then let Amina come in. I don't think that's factually the case. I think Macron tried diplomacy. I believe that all the European leaders have been trying diplomacy, and I don't think it's true. I think what they weren't very good is that the optics. It looked as if they weren't trying it, and this is an institutional failure in all countries which we don't have peace diplomatic initiatives. I mean, I've been trying to reach out to the Foreign Office in Britain through someone I met, and because it's so important, the optics. I'm calling for a institute of peacemaking inside the British Foreign Office and in all countries, like in France and all that. And their job would be to do the peace diplomacy. We don't have them at the moment. And so, of course, it's a total failure, but it's an institutional failure. That's why Amina is campaigning for a Department of Peace Building in America, which would do that. Do you want to comment, Amina? Come in.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. And Sean, I agree with your point of view on this, absolutely, because I think generally it's also been my observation. I'm not an expert on European politics, but at least looking at the US, and I think generally Western leaders don't prioritize peace at all. And that's just been a fact, and that's why the world is in the condition that it is. And I in that sense, I agree with you, and I hope if Trump, it's hard to tell Trump's intentions just because he hasn't had the best track record, but if his intention is to use diplomacy, then this would be the only good thing he's doing. And in that sense, I agree with your point of view, Sean. And like Thomas said, that's why we need departments of peace within or cabinet level departments of peace in every country, ministries of peace everywhere.
Yeah.
That would be their job to choose diplomacy over war or sending weapons. And one last comment I wanted to make. Just some of the meetings we've had with members of Congress, sitting members of Congress and current sitting members of Congress, they have the member of Congress, I've heard him say that, Jim McGovern, that while he appreciated, he's a big supporter of the DOP, and while he appreciated our efforts, he said that in Congress, his observation, and he's been a multi-term member of Congress, that his observation has been in terms of Ukraine and specifically Russia and Ukraine situation. And this was prior to Trump. This was during Biden's era that he mentioned that to us in a meeting, that it's always, the discussion is always, how much weapons should we send? How much money should we send to Ukraine to kind of really for defense? No one ever talks about diplomacy or peace. That's never a priority, and that's why he's a big supporter of the DOP. So just wanted to mention that this is from politicians within the US admitting that is the strategy. And so to your point, Sean, that's probably one of the biggest problems we have in the world, that peace doesn't get priority.
Yeah. And DOP means Department of Peace Building, for those not aware of the acronym. Mazin, you've just joined us from Palestine. Do you want to unmute and introduce yourself? Welcome, sir. Nice to see you. Welcome back.
See you all. Thank you. Sorry I was late. I had another engagement.
No problem. We were just about to discuss the Middle East, so it's good timing you've turned up. Because we'd love a report back on how things are going. Are you there at the moment?
Yes, I'm in Bethlehem, speaking to you from my village just on the outskirts of Bethlehem, called Beit Sahur, the Shepherd's Field. So Bethlehem is besieged and surrounded, but it's and there's attacks on some of the villages, and a prisoner was released to the hospital in Bethlehem. He was in a coma, apparently in jail, in a coma following torture in jail. So people are worried about their loved ones in Israeli jails, because all the ones they released so far had severe torture.
That's terrible.
Many could not walk and things like that.
Shocking.
So,
there's due to be another release, isn't there? I mean, Israel's supposed to release another 600 prisoners. Has that happened yet?
They released those after a week delay. They delayed actually twice, but it was total like 8 days delay to fulfill the requirements of the ceasefire. This was the last batch in phase 1 of the so-called ceasefire, which applies to one side only, of course, because Israel violates the ceasefire regularly with impunity, both here and in Lebanon, with continuing killing and denial of food and medicine, which is supposed to be part of the ceasefire agreement. That humanitarian aid would be allowed in. But anyway,
so did they release those prisoners yet?
Yeah, they released them in the past 48 hours.
Okay, that's good.
Batches. So that's good. And they released the children and the woman that the Israelis had also in jail. So supposedly now the Israelis don't have any women and children in their jails. And resistance movement also doesn't have any women and children in their jails.
Right. When
So-
these prisoners are released, let's say the 600 Palestinians, where do they go? Do they go back to Gaza? Do they go to the West Bank? Do you know where they go?
Yeah, 480 of them went back to Gaza. The rest are either in the West Bank or in exile. They were, especially the ones with large, long-term sentences like life imprisonment. They were forced to go to another country like Egypt or Turkey, mostly to Egypt. So that's basically what happened. But this was
Right.
the last phase of the exchange, the last batch of exchange of prisoners that in phase 1, and now they're supposed to engage in phase 2. The Israeli government doesn't really want to go to phase 2 because then they will lose the government majority and they will have to call for elections. So they are stalling on negotiations on phase 2. And the compromise are saying, let's extend phase 1, continue to release prisoners in exchange for Israel allowing humanitarian aid to come through, which is really horrific, you know, that this is allowed in international law, that you hold the captive population, deny it food and medicine and water, and say, well, the resistance has to release all the Israeli prisoners. But anyway, this is what's happening on that front. In the West Bank, Israel is demolishing homes and refugee camps in Jenin, Tulkarem, and Nablus, and blockade on those cities. And I have friends, I talked to one of them today. He's been trapped in his house for 37 days now, smuggling food, basically. Israeli military is around his house. So,
is he in Jenin? Where is he?
Yeah, in Jenin.
Yeah.
And I got a call from a person from Gaza today, begging for money, basically, because you can buy some things in Gaza, but they cost a lot of money. And Ramadan is coming tomorrow. Is the first day of Ramadan, and usually people stock up for Ramadan. So I don't know. It's a difficult situation for us in Bethlehem. The situation is better, somewhat marginally, but the economy is shut down because of the no tourism to the Church of Nativity, and so the hotels are empty. I have one friend who's staying at an empty hotel. He says he'd like to contribute to the local economy by paying at the hotel. I told him you should come and stay with us, save your money. But he wants to contribute to the local economy because there's no tourists. He's like the only volunteer that's staying at the hotel.
Incredible.
And so souvenir shops are largely shut down. The restaurants have some business, but it's local business, not international. So that's, and our institute, we have this Palestine Institute for Biodiversity and Sustainability is having a difficult time because we don't have donations like we used to from international and other visitors to the Museum of Natural History or the Botanic Garden that we have. That's where some of our revenue came from, is from tourists, both local and international, but even local tourists, difficult to move around now. The checkpoints are closed around Bethlehem, so.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry to hear that. I just a couple of bits of information for you and others on the call. I was part of it. I chaired a discussion with I think he's called the rector of the Bethlehem University. You probably know him. He's, I think, a Roman Catholic Scottish guy. Do you know him? I can't remember his name now, but
Well,
he was. We had an interesting call, and we were discussing the business of edgicide, whether what Israel did in Gaza by shooting and killing all the professors and blowing up the universities, should that, it's something totally new. It's like, for me, shooting and killing school kids or professors is totally off the scale of what's appropriate. It hasn't happened, thank God, in Bethlehem University, but it happened in Gaza. And we had a discussion about this. Do you know the chap?
Brother, who, Brother Peter? I mean,
Scottish,
who's?
I think he's called Bert McKettrick or something. Scottish name.
I think I know who you're talking about.
Yeah.
I wrote a paper, by the way, titled Scholasticide,
Right.
about the destruction of the higher education in the Gaza Strip.
Okay.
Published a couple of months ago.
Right. Well, I'd love to see a copy if you can forward it to me or the link or something.
I will do it.
And the other thing I wanted to say is the American Historical Association, which is the body of all the main academic historians in the States. I've been a member on and off for years, even though I don't live there. We passed a resolution at a meeting, like about 200 historians voted in favor of this, criticizing Israel for, they call it scholasticide, the deliberate targeting of colleges, professors, and all that. But the governing board, which was a smaller group, not the General Council, they then vetoed it and wouldn't let it become policy, So the American historical profession are having a sort of internal spat as to whether what Israel has done should be condemned or not. I think it should be, as a scholarly historian, like we're watching, like it's just shocking what we're seeing in real time. And so I think that's something, at the very least, the least we can do is get the academic profession around the world to condemn this.
This is a very, very important thing to do if you can pressure academic and professional societies. Some of them are still even planning conventions in Israel instead of boycotting Israel for its genocide. It's amazing. I put, by the way, the link for this paper on scholasticide in the chat room, if people want to look it up.
Yeah, okay. No, I'm sure we will. And no, I agree. I think that is the least we can do. But we could go even further. We could actually encourage some dialogue. So if we had an Irish Ministry of Peace and Reconciliation, and I know the Zionist government doesn't really like Ireland at the moment, but tough, we should be inviting Israeli and Palestinian academics to come and talk about what are your peace plans. We need to restart not the Oslo process, but the Dublin process. Actually get them talking to each other on the same way that we got the Good Friday Agreement. And that's what I wrote to the Irish Prime Minister. Anyway, Sean, what would you like to comment?
Well, thanks, Thomas. Just a quick question. UNRWA, I've lost what actually happened with the organization. Is it still there helping the Palestinians because it was made illegal or something a few weeks ago?
Yeah, the United Nations Relief and Work Agency, there's an attack that's intensifying to try and liquidate it. Israel already confiscated buildings that belong to UNRWA in Jerusalem, near Shafat refugee camp, etc. And they plan to build settlements in those buildings. And they prevent their work in many places, including in the refugee camps in the north of the West Bank, where Israel is demolishing houses in the refugee camps and plan to open a road in the middle of the refugee camp. And we're not sure if they will allow the refugees to go back to those camps, but they shut down the offices of UNRWA within the refugee camps that they attacked. And the same thing they did in Gaza, of course, the Gaza Strip. Essentially, most buildings that belong to the UN have been demolished or bombed by the Israeli military. And Israel won't allow UNRWA to deliver humanitarian aid to Gaza. They used to be the largest humanitarian aid, delivering aid to the refugees in Gaza. So Israel won't allow them to operate now, and they rely on like World Food Kitchen and etc. that still have some access and some permission from the Israelis to operate. Israel also froze the accounts of UNRWA in the banks, in the local banks. And so I'm not sure what, but the idea of destruction of UNRWA is a long-term idea that Israel is taking advantage of the current situation to carry it through. And the idea is that if you destroy UNRWA, you destroy the possibility of these refugees returning to their homes and lands. So you forestall any kind of potential settlement of the refugee question based on international law. This is what they are dreaming, that destroying the United Nations entity that helps the refugees for humanitarian and educational and health purposes would liquidate the Palestinian refugees somehow. That'll make them disappear.
Yeah, no, I mean, there is a dimension to this that nobody really talks about, but I've been monitoring it carefully. In a sense, Israel declared war on the United Nations as well. That's another dimension to what's been going on, the taking down of UNRWA. But if you recall, the Israeli ambassador to the UN was always going to the UN and shouting and screaming, demonically against it, as if it's the devil's trick. And Netanyahu, whenever he goes to speak at the UN, does the same. I've been watching for this for the last 5 years, as Israel has been gradually trying to sort of demonize the UN. And what I'm disturbed at is that then entered the propaganda noosphere on the hard right chatbots and so on. So that now you have America saying, oh, we're going to leave the UN. It's become a sort of meme that right-wing Americans think, oh, the UN's horrible, it's all socialists, evil communists. So I think this is very disturbing. My mother was a lifelong member of the United Nations Association in Brighton, sort of old ladies having tea to raise money for the UN. I mean, it's such a center piece of the peace order. I was friends with Malcolm Harper, who ran the UNA in Brighton, in London, United Nations Association. I mean, so for me to see right-wing Americans attacking the UN, which is the body we created at the end of World War II, to stop these things happening again, I think it's utterly shocking. And I can see its origin in Israeli propaganda. I'm not a fool. When I did my history degree at the University of London, we used the phrase revisionists. So what's going on here is Israel is a revisionist power which only came into being in 1948. It's a very new state. It doesn't know how to behave in terms of international politics and diplomacy and peacecraft. And it's very new. It's like an adolescent kid that suddenly got all this territory, and it doesn't realize, really, it still doesn't realize there is such a thing as international law. That hasn't sort of been allowed to filter through the mind of the Likud people. I think Labour kind of vaguely knew about that and weren't quite so bad, but the Likud lot, they helped weaponize this idea of this anti-UN stuff. So we've got as the World Intellectual Forum, we have a huge job to outthink all this lot and to unthink it and to expose what's been going on. And I think, you know, I mean, I've spoken twice at the UN headquarters. It's not ideal. It's an organization with many problems, but it's the best we've got. And to take it down and for America to say they're going to leave it is just absurd, in my opinion. I don't know what people think. How can we strengthen? I mean, I've always said the UN should have sent a peacekeeping force in to protect Gaza. And am I right in thinking phase 2 of this truce they've got, this ceasefire, the Israeli forces withdraw from Gaza, don't they? I mean, I've read the documents. At some point, their army is withdrawing from Gaza and a peacekeeping force goes in, doesn't it, Mazin? I think they should have UN helmets on, shouldn't they?
Yeah. I mean, we have to realize that the UN, as you said, was trying to produce a world order that resolves conflict. This is why it was established to begin with after the Second World War.
Yeah.
To replace the League of Nations, which had a similar mandate, didn't succeed in it. That was First World War, following the First World War. Anyway, when the UN was created in 1945, the 5 major powers that created it, winners of the Second World War, wanted to create a system that would resolve some conflicts, but would retain their own hegemony over it. And that's why they gave themselves veto power at the UN Security Council, and they made the UN General Assembly being basically like a non-binding resolutions of the UN General Assembly. I think that worked for the empires a little bit, and the US kind of absolved itself by using its veto power from its war crimes in places like Vietnam and Cambodia and so on, Iraq and so forth, because I had the veto power. But as you said, there was an important mechanism. I wouldn't use the word imperfect. It was flawed, but nevertheless, it still functioned somehow. Now, in the past few years, especially after the rise of Zionist power in Western capitals, the UN has become not needed, so to speak, for this empire to kind of show itself as pushing for harmonious relationship or for peace. Occasionally they do rubber stamps like on the Good Friday agreements in Ireland or some other places, or in South Africa after the end of apartheid. But really, in the end, they were not decision-making body. They were kind of endorsement body. Well, this endorsement function of it is no longer needed by people like Donald Trump and Netanyahu. They don't need this function anymore. So
yeah, but that's only 2 nations. There's 163 nations in the world.
Right.
You know,
So,
and we should come together and like reclaim the UN, and it should be involved in. I mean, I feel as a UN supporter for many years, speaking there and all that this Palestinian-Israeli meltdown, the crisis, the bombing of Lebanon, Syria, you know, is a failure of the UN, and it should re-examine its structure. And I think the veto power of the Security Council should go. There's a number of people, we just had a meeting in New York in September last year calling for this, talking about the future, sort of futures of the UN. You know, there's some structural reforms needed in the UN. But you know, the hard right want to just destroy it. And you know, and then they feel they can do whatever they want in the world without any punity or any consequences. That's the problem.
If it's going to be reformed, that reform will have to come from powerful countries like China and Russia and Brazil and India. Those are the BRICS countries, if you want. The BRICS countries need to assert themselves, and they are beginning to show such assertions against the US imperial interests, if you want. But I think, having Trump in office, there's a silver lining to this dark cloud. Trump is going to accelerate the demise of the US empire, in my humble opinion. So,
Okay.
because he's so brash, so arrogant,
So crazy. Yeah.
get Greenland and wants to get Panama and annex Canada and build Trump Plaza in Gaza. I mean, he's totally disconnected from the reality of the world. And he's like, the Caesar who was, I forgot his name, who was playing
Caligula.
Rome burned.
Nero. Yeah.
Yeah,
He's
Nero.
probably the reincarnation of Nero. I've always thought that.
Yes.
Hence his love of gold, because Nero loved gold. Yeah. Welcome to James, who's joined us from Sussex. We're talking about the Middle East, what we can do about Gaza, Israel. Mazin is joining us from Bethlehem. He runs a Center for Palestinian ecology and so on there. We've been having a very interesting discussion. Sean, you go, and then we'll come to James. Yeah.
Thanks, Thomas. Just very briefly, in today's paper, and I assume maybe in the French papers as well, it's the first report from the Israeli army about its failure on the 7th of October. And it certainly it says that it underestimated Hamas. That's its main, and it kind of it asks for forgiveness from the Israeli people. But down in it is a very interesting thing, which I think you might have mentioned before. Of course, the army, the IDF, are going to blame the politicians to a certain extent, but they were blaming them and said, the politicians, the leaders of Israel, supported Hamas to undermine the Palestinian Authority, and that was one of the failures. That will have to come back up. Now, the Israeli army, of course, will say that, but that has been said.
But it's true.
Yeah.
And did they actually say that in the report then?
Yes, in the report. I had the paper here beside me, and it's a writer, like it's not from, it's a major report in one of the major newspapers, so I assume it's correct.
Well, I mean, it's anyone with any knowledge of the history of the whole thing knows that, in a sense, Israel colluded with the rise of Hamas, so that it would diminish the importance of, the legitimate Palestinian Authority. And therefore, this is all, in a sense, a product of that collusion, in my opinion.
Well done, Conker, but I do want to comment on your statement about what is being released now about what happened, the failures on October 6 and October 7.
Right.
The Israeli military is the one who investigated this. They investigated themselves, and they recognized that they failed in terms of militarily failed against Hamas. A resistance movement managed to cross a fortified, perimeter in human history, and managed to take over 22 military outposts, the most heavily guarded and most advanced weapons there is. So yes, they demonstrate that there's a failure, but everybody already knew that. The problem is that the Israeli government and the military do not investigate something beyond the security aspect or military aspect. Why was there a ghetto uprising in Gaza? What happened? Why is there a ghetto in Gaza? Why is 2.3 million people cooped up, 70% of them refugees, in an open-air prison before October 2023? They don't investigate the political questions or think about political solution. And what you were saying, Dr. Thomas, is you know, that is very important. People don't think of politics or resolution. They think, to them, you know, it's like you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So
Yeah.
what's a hammer is the military. And the military is all they have. They don't have any thinking of politics or human rights or justice or refugees or what they created here, which is the largest concentration camps since the Second World War. Basically, people are being starved or genocide being committed. None of this is going to be investigated, not by the Israeli military and certainly not by the Israeli political leaders. And I'm not sure there's a distinction, because somebody once said and even wrote a book about the subject, is that Israel is not a state with an army. It's an army that has a state. You know, it's an army that has a state. It's what that runs a country. Most political leaders in Israel are actually of army background, and they work thinking only, as I said, they have this hammer called the military, and they think the only solution is to keep hammering. Then
Sure.
what you hammer.
But America thinks the same. You know, if you go into America's foreign policy over the last 20 or 30 years, bombing Libya, bombing Kosovo, bombing Serbia, you know, all they can think of is bombing. They don't have their Ministry of Peace Building, which is why we support it, to actually think, well, hey, how about going easy on the bombing and let's actually encourage people to talk to each other, you know, and like do mediation, do old-fashioned diplomacy. Because, you know, I believe that's what America's supposed to be created for. I mean, it emerged out of a bloody conflict, and it should have and always has had people that actually value peace. So has Israel. This is the tragedy. So has Israel. A lot of the early Zionists. I just read a fantastic book by a friend of my late mother by Jacqueline Rose. I don't know if any of you have read this book. It's called The Question of Zionism. It's quite a short 200-page book, and it goes into the early history of Zionism back in the 19th century. Before it was a thing, it was always regarded as a fringe idea by mainstream Jews in Europe and elsewhere, and in the Holy Land. It was like a weird idea. And the chief rabbis all condemned it. They said, no, this is a heresy. It's not Judaism at all. You know, the idea that and one of the reasons they condemned it was they said, no, only God can restore Israel. This has to be done by divine fiat. Whereas what the Zionists are trying to do is do it with violence, do it with sneaky politics, do it with infiltration, do it with ultimately violence, which is a human hubris. And therefore, this is a heresy. That's what they said way back. And I, you know, the more we see of what the Zionists are up to, I think one has to agree with the rabbis. And that's why most of the very religious Jews now are condemning all this. So, you know, anyway, I recommend that book, The Question of Zionism. And I did invite Dr. Jacqueline Rose to come on this forum and speak about it. She's a professor at Birkbeck College, where I used to teach in the University of London, but she said she's too busy, you know, but maybe we'll get her another time. I want to share something else as well whilst we're on this topic. Sorry, James, I know you're coming in here, but let me just say this. I was shocked to see a report, maybe you could comment or somebody, of an Israeli cabinet member, a Likud member, saying that his solution to Gaza is to, I don't know, was it to kill every single Palestinian male and like cleanse Gaza of the Palestinian men, and then the women can all be just sent off to wherever, you know, like an absolute, I mean, a call to male genocide. And he actually said this on public media. He was reported as saying this. He's not been disciplined. He's not been sacked from Likud. I don't have his name to hand, but I was utterly appalled. You know, if somebody said that in the British cabinet, they'd be out, you know, within like a few seconds. There's got to be some ethical boundaries to what people do and say. I don't know, James, did you pick up on that? Did you see that report?
I didn't say, no, but very they have made other similar statements from the Likud, so it's not terribly surprising. They're really digging themselves into a hole legally, I'm afraid, and hopefully one day the law will catch up with them. But unfortunately, my attitude is that we haven't got time to wait for that. The law has already had a go twice and failed twice to get them arraigned and to stop the bombing and all the other abuses. And I'm afraid I've got to suggest now that we need to resort to the old, or at least well-tried operation by the United Nations called the responsibility to protect. We use this excuse, if you like, this idea to protect people in Iraq, going in there and saying we've got to protect human rights by sending in the army, basically. We did the same thing to Yugoslavia, because we said that the Yugoslavians were being nasty to the Muslims, whereas in fact it was a fairly minor conflict between the Kosovos from Albania running into what was really Serbian territory and burning their farms and stealing their property, rather like the Israelis do. And as a result of those two things, the leaders were taken out and tried and given the death penalty, right?
Yeah.
So that model should apply to the Israelis. Now, again, that would take time, and we haven't got it. So I've suggested to the only power I know that could do anything significant to stop the bombing and the abuses, which is China. So I've written to the Chinese ambassador in the hope that he will, asking him to send this responsibility to protect idea, which is detailed in this document, to the Foreign Office in China. Luckily, our ambassador, their ambassador here, was a member of the Foreign Office, so he has a way in there possibly, in order to ask Xi Jinping and the Central People's Committee to propose to the United Nations that there should be this responsibility to protect action. In other words, it's got to be military, unfortunately. I'm a man of peace and you're a man of philosophy, and I would love to take your philosophical approach. We should have done it ages ago, but unfortunately now there isn't time. Too many people are not only dying, but suffering a horrible death by starvation, by deprivation of everything.
Illness and the whole thing, yeah.
We've got to move fast, I think.
But let me just ask, James, because if they agree, let's say the Chinese write back and say, yes, we'll do it, and they take it forward to the Security Council, it'll be vetoed. If they take it to the General Assembly, that'll be vetoed. I mean, the UN structure cannot enact this, can it? I mean, it would be good gesture politics to get it through, and that would be worth doing. But, you know, I mean, just a question mark. I mean, is it time for some kind of unilateral action?
Well, I think it would.
Shouldn't, why? I mean, I mean, the British caused this trouble. Shouldn't we send in the British Navy to sort it out?
Yes,
unilaterally. If Gladstone was in power, he'd say, yes, we've got to protect these people. They're our responsibility. We unleashed Zionism on the world with the Balfour Agreement. We have a moral duty to protect these people.
Absolutely right.
And let's send in the Navy. And if Israel wants to fire on the Navy, fine. You know, we'll fight back. I mean, I don't know. Is this very, I don't see where's the Gladstone spirit gone?
No. If I could just address your first point, there is a clause in the United Nations Charter, Article 27 says, under Chapter 6, when there's this kind of thing is mooted, parties to a dispute forfeit their right to vote. Now, there's no question that America is a party to this dispute, a very one-sided one. It arms Israel, it gives Israel military and political support. It does nothing for the Palestinians. It's actually withdrawn some of the aid that they were giving.
Sure, and they're trying to join in cutting out UNRWA and all that. Yeah.
Yes, that sort of thing. Now,
So that Article 27 actually says that if you're a party to a conflict, you can't vote in the Security Council. Does it say that?
in the Security Council, yes, that's right.
Well, it looks to me they've been ignoring the constitution of the UN then all along.
Well, the problem is, as one of our tame ambassadors here has told me, Peter Ford, do you know him? He's very useful.
I don't think so, no.
Well, he's said, well, that the Chinese are a bit wary of using that device because they don't want it used against them. So I've had to explain to the Chinese that this is a far worse problem than anything they're likely to run into. What I haven't said because it's a bit dodgy, but they're faced with a similar, what you might call accusation for the way they treat the Uyghurs in northwest China.
Yeah.
I would like to say, if you get Article 27 used against you when somebody goes in or wants to go in to help the Uyghurs, you can say, well, we've already tried that to help Muslim people in Palestine. So we're obviously not anti-Muslim, and we don't actually do anything to harm the Uyghurs anyway. They are an independent entity. We'd like them to be part of China, but they've got independence in northwest China. So
So it'd be good for their own statecraft, is what you're saying. You're trying to sell this idea.
Yes.
It's a, clever move, James.
Well, it's see if it works.
Yeah. Can I just, for those that don't know, James is the one-man Ministry of Peace. Britain doesn't have a Ministry of Peace, but James was part of a committee that was setting one up, like Amina is part of the American one, and he's never stopped doing it. The rest of the committee have sort of all fallen asleep. But you are, so I regard him as our Minister of Peace in Britain.
Thank you very much.
And one day, hopefully, he'll have part of Whitehall and a staff of 1,000 to actually, do this. That's what we want. Right. Any other points to raise about? Mazin, do you want to comment on what do you think? Because China hosted a meeting of all the Palestinian factions, didn't they?
Yeah.
Like last year, and managed to get agreements and stuff. But that was before. I can't remember. Was that before October the 7th, or was it after?
No, it was last year.
Okay, so it was after. And what happened to the agreements?
We never heard. I didn't hear anyway. I haven't asked either.
Yeah. Because yes. So anyway, I want to mention one other thing which is connected to all this. My nephew, Dan Davies, is a filmmaker who works for Al Jazeera. He's freelance, but he does a lot of work for Al Jazeera. And he just made a 2-part film called The Palestine Laboratory, which was, I watched both parts very, gripped. It was an exposure of the Israeli weapons industry, which I didn't really know much about before. I'd come across this company called Albert, which is the biggest one. Yeah, because they have been infiltrating the MIT campus in America, and they were some students were campaigning about that because the MIT are making the technical stuff that enables this Albert systems to invent equipment that has facial recognition stuff. So drones that fly around with cameras can then spot your face and immediately order a rocket attack on you from somewhere else. And MIT are making this stuff with their brilliant mathematicians. Some students who were doing PhDs found out about this and protested. And then they were threatened and their funding was going to be cut. And they were told if they don't back down, they'll be chucked out of MIT, their careers will be destroyed. They're young 20-year-old geniuses. And they've refused to back down. They said, no, And Chris Hedges interviewed them. One's an Indian guy, a brilliant mathematician. The other one was, I don't know, a different kind of American. And if you haven't seen that interview of Chris Hedges, it's worth it. So then I thought, oh, okay, Albert. And then Dan Davies did this film, 2 parts, about the whole way that the Israeli arms industry operates. And they're brilliant minds inventing stuff which can pick up on code words and they're specializing in drone warfare and surveillance cameras, and they've become the market leaders in the field, and they've been testing all this stuff in Palestine. And they interviewed in the film, if you haven't seen it, let me just tell you, they interviewed a Palestinian woman who's campaigning against all this. She said living in Palestine now, I think she was talking about the West Bank, is like living in a sort of open air prison where every street corner there's a camera. They're monitoring everything you do. There are drones flying around even on your roof. So if you're on the roof putting out your washing, there's a kind of an Israeli drone looking at you. And this is in Palestine. This is in their territory, right? And she said psychologically it's just a nightmare to live with all this stuff. And someone behind that camera sitting in an office in some army base, checking you out, and she said you have to smile and pretend to be innocent, because if you look a bit shifty, you'll get shot. I mean, the psychological, anyway, long story short, watch the film. Let me just say that the companies that are making this stuff, trialing it in Palestine, they're now exporting it to El Paso, to the American border with Mexico. And the same companies have now helped police the entire Mexican-US border, where Nicolette's from. And also they've exported it to northern India. So our Indian friends, should watch this film. I've sent it to Sam Petroda because the Indian government is the biggest importer of Israeli spy and military equipment. And I find this very sinister as an Indian lover, and I've been there many times, I think what's happened, and India is using it in Kashmir to sort of spy on the Muslims. I think what's happened here, reading between the lines, is Netanyahu and the Israeli arms industry have exported this fear of Islam wherever they can. It's like they've demonized Islam. And then on the strength of that, they sell billions and billions of, pounds worth of equipment to India to spy on their own people. And I believe in the India that where the Muslims and Hindus and Buddhists and Christians and Zoroastrians and Parsis and the seculars and the Gandhians live in peace, But it seems to me that behind the scenes, Israel has been weaponizing this for its own arms profits. And that explains Modi, where he's coming from, weaponizing Hindu fascism and nationalism. So there is a link here that people need to know. And this is another reason why we've got to get Israel to start behaving like a normal nation. We have to normalize its relations with its neighboring states and with its Muslim population and its Christian population. Anyway, that's my comment. Has anyone else seen the films yet? Hands up. I sent them round with the invite to this meeting. Do go away and watch them because they're really, really important. Mazin, have you seen it? Is it shown in Palestine?
Yes, I saw them and I shared the links in my last email.
And yeah, I mean, I suppose you guys know all this anyway, but it was for us, it was new, right? I suppose philosophically, going back, putting my philosopher's hat on, James, thanks for that. I mean, where this is all coming from is fear. The Israeli population are afraid. I mean, we have an Israeli friend on here, Gila Haron, who sometimes comes. She's terrified. And the trouble is that into that narrative of being afraid, the breakout by Hamas, although it's totally, we can understand the causes, that just amplifies their fear. So all these security drones and all the rest of it come out of fear. And the same with the Palestinians. They're living in fear. whether well, every shape and color of Palestinians, you know, and how can we? This is a philosophical question. How can we? Christ asked us to said, "Perfect love casts out fear." That's my favorite phrase from the New Testament, right? How can we access that perfect love, and how can it actually cast out fear? Please, any hands up? Yeah, Nicolette. You'll have to unmute. Great. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, thanks for your patience. So I've been doing a lot of research for these other groups that I'm in. One of them I've been studying, which might interest you, from this professor of philosophy, René Girard.
Can you hold your microphone up? It's dropped down. There.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can. Great.
Yeah, I don't know. And Amina's over there, you know, in California, out of Stanford, was this French-American philosopher, René Girard. He died in 2005.
René Girard, yeah, great thinker. I love him.
Right. Well, still, his book, Things Hidden Since the Foundation of the World, with Dr. Jean Paul, I think, Hulot-Vienne, somebody in Paris. He's a psychiatrist in Paris. He's still alive. You could meet with them. You know, they're continuing a lot of things with their mimetic theory. I don't know if you're
Hold
aware
the
of this.
microphone up. We can't hear you.
I'm sorry.
Keep it up.
Yeah, new equipment. So they're continuing with their ideas about the mimetic theory, the very religious, you know, it was kind of rejected in France because they're laic and secular and all, but, you know, he was very Catholic. He had a conversion, and what did I want to say? I mean, they're continuing research.
Explain what the mimetic theory is. Can you summarize Girard's work?
Oh my God. I'm in this Facebook group if you find it. It's so complicated. I have a video I could send you to, but he looked, yeah. So René Girard was in Paris under the occupation of the Nazis in split France. There was like a civil war in France technically then, you know, and he was from Avignon, which then belonged to the papacy. It was not actually at that time part of France. And his dad was anti-clerical, his mom was a believer, you know, so he kind of, but they were very intelligent. His wife had a baccalaureate, and his father was, I forget what, but anyway, he got himself a PhD scholarship to the US. He ended up marrying American, and he did his PhD research on like anti-French attitudes of the Americans after the war and stuff. He's a fascinating person, you know, like brilliant. I mean, he got bullied a lot by people, was kicked out of schools. But he did a really, like before the internet, reading mythology. He loved Greek mythology, and he kept at it. He was teaching this comparative literature in US universities and stuff. What he noticed was a pattern from the Old Testament and the New Testament. I don't know how much time we have, you know, but the idea of scapegoating and what exactly the gospel was and why it is that Christianity is different from Islam and Judaism, what's going on in the Bible. It's really eye-opening, you know. Yeah, so they have in Vienna conferences still, like a colloquium on religion and violence. If there's something, you know, you could get to and talk to people. It's really, they're saying basically human beings learn by imitation. Patatio, he calls it mimesis, to make it different from like Latin, you know, religious stuff. But so we're in this dance of mimetic rivalry with each other. And so after like 2001, they talked to René Girard, who was in the US then, and he said, these are mimetic attacks. You know, these are not the poor disenfranchised of Libya fighting us. You know, these are people coming at us with the sophisticated weapons in our own manner, trying to outdo us. And they came out of Hamburg, they came out of Europe, you know, these are engineers. And he didn't look at it like it was a religious war, and said people took him more seriously at this point. And he said in the 90s, I have like audio recordings, that Palestine is a mimetic rivalry. I don't know how to explain it, but it's like, and we don't really have desires of our own. Even Yuval Noah Harari, what he's saying, that human beings don't really have free will. They don't even know what they want. They have to be taught what they want. We have to be taught to speak by our parents, taught how to do everything, right?
Right.
So, right. And so this is what he's saying, it's all just mimetic, back and forth. And this is what Palestine was. We had a Jewish Nakba. We gave it to them. We promised this and that. And
Sure.
it escalates to apocalypse. Revelation is apocalypse. And what he's saying is what Jesus came to say was, on the cross it was finished. This is human sacrifice, or whatever, what you wanted. And now I'm going to have my spirit, and, until whatever. And the Katichon they're talking about, holding back. I was listening to something from Peter Thiel now, all these Catholics and stuff and religious people, they really love Trump, and they're anti-woke.
That's what's weird. I find that weird, but
and
okay.
they hate one world government. Thiel's German. So if you would follow up with this, I could send you some stuff.
Sure.
I don't really have a solution for Israel-Palestine right now,
but we might want to look at Girard's work. Okay, thank you, Nicolette. That's very important. Can I just add that when I got involved with the Irish conflict, I knew this guy called Frank Wright, who was a peace researcher. And we had a conference at the University of London. This is back even in the 80s, I think, who was going on about René Girard. And I just happened to have by my it's on my table, René Girard. This is his book. And I saw Satan fall like lightning, right? This is on my reading pile at the moment, because I'm doing a commentary on the Gospel of Matthew with my scholar. And I'm quoting, and let me just quote from the forward. How does mimetic desire lead to conflict and violence? Because Girard said, ultimately we're loving creatures. We copy each other. When you love somebody, you want to copy them. Like, a child copies its parents because it loves them. A lover copies the lover. And have you ever noticed how loving couples end up looking like each other with the same gestures? It's because they love each other so much, right? So that's the basic law of life. And even in your cellular level, the whole system works by copying. The RNA and the DNA is constantly copying and copying, right? So the whole universe works through mirroring. And in the Shinto religion, they say the mirror is the most holy thing, because they were onto this centuries ago, right? He explains it the following. So he calls that mimetic desire. We have the desire to copy who we love, right? But the problem is it goes wrong, because what do you do? How does mimetic desire, which is a good thing, lead to conflict and violence? Well, if our desire to be like a model is strong enough, if we identify with that person closely enough, we will want to have what the model has or be what the model is. If this is carried far enough, and if there are no safeguards breaking desire, which is one of the functions of religion and culture, then we become rivals of our models, or we compete with one another to become better imitators of the same model. And we imitate our rivals even as we compete with them. This rivalistic situation opens human societies to the possibility of scandal, which is another very important word for Girard. So let's just say at this point, like Putin is a great hero to many people all over the planet. They want to copy him because they love him. So they want to be as strong and ruthless and cruel as he is. Netanyahu is a great model for many right-wing Zionists. They want to be cruel and let's kill the Palestinians, and it's a problem. Boris Johnson and the Brexiteers, they got a whole right-wing following in Britain of people wanting to be more Brexit, stronger Brexit, no deal Brexit, So people are easily led astray if the model that they're following has no ethics. And we're seeing this with Trump. The guy is completely a charlatan, but he's got millions of people following him. And what Girard, to cut a long story short, what Girard said is what Christ's mission was to cut through all this and to say, let's copy the source of everything. Let's go back to the source, which is the ultimate, the absolute, which is imageless, and which lives inside each one of us as pure spirit, which can't be copied, but it can be loved. So like, anyway, I'll report more next time, but I think Girard, thank you for raising him, is a very important intellectual working for peace, and we need more of them, because yes, I don't think the philosophy route has been completely exhausted yet. James, do you want to reply?
Well, coming back to your original proposal, that I think it was that fear could be turned into love.
Yes.
That may be possible on the Palestinian side. I can't see it happening on the Zionist side. But on the other hand, I mean, looking at it historically, if they didn't, the Israelis would have nothing to fear if they weren't being so cruel to the Palestinians. Apartheid is cruel. Denying them food and water in Gaza is cruel. Bombing them is cruel. Taking their homes and burning their farms and throwing stones at their cars, all that generates, unfortunately, hatred. And it's born of, you might say, fear, but they don't need to fear the Palestinians, because originally, certainly around about 1900, 1920, that sort of period, they were all getting on fairly well. There weren't that many Jews in Palestine, but there was no trouble that I've heard of any significance. Mazin might be able to correct me on this, but I think that basically the Palestinians were being very patient and hospitable to the Jewish influx. And I think there is a lot of love amongst Palestinian people and Muslims in general. It's part of their philosophy. Whereas the Jewish philosophy, if you take it from the Talmud, is all about exactly the opposite. It's about the ability to sanction cruelty to other people, enslavement, killing, deception. All that is in the Talmud as something that the Jews are entitled to do.
Well, it's not the only thing that's in the Talmud. Let me just put my critical hat on. There are good bits in the Talmud as well, but it is in the Old Testament. I mean, the Joshua conquest, and God seems to be a mass slaughterer in if you read the text literally.
Right.
And of course, biblical scholars like me, we don't read this text literally. This was written long after the events it described. And it's all bigged up because at that time the Jews were in exile. They were trying to romantically yearn for a lost home. So they had to write a book that made them the superpower people of God.
Right.
But it was fake news from the beginning. The irony is we humans invented writing, and then what did we do with it? We started telling stories, Mazin, do you want to reply to Sean what he was to James?
I actually have to leave in a couple of minutes.
We're finishing in 5 minutes anyway, but tell us about your family background. Where were they in 1900?
Mine?
Yeah.
Well, I trace my ancestors here to at least 1700 years ago. The first Christians basically here. And that's probably, we couldn't trace any further back because before that, the Romans were feeding us to the lions. So people were underground. But anyways, the family is genetically Canaanitic. Like most Palestinians, we trace our ancestors here for thousands of years. And if you look at DNA, it's most Palestinians are descendants of the first inhabitants of this land that came out of Africa when Homo sapiens migrated out of Africa 150,000 years ago. So that's an indigenous population of Palestine. The situation, I just quickly on the issue of Judaism, Islam, Christianity, all religions, as you pointed out, you find in their texts some problematical issues and some good issues. Monotheistic religions in general are less tolerant than polytheistic religions. but that's the nature of the beast, so to speak. You believe in God or the highway if you want. So that's what we have historically. And people need to not mix religion with politics. Crusaders tried to use religion to justify colonization and oppression. Zionism is the same thing, tried to use Judaism to justify colonization, oppression, ethnic cleansing, and now genocide increasingly. That's the nature of political movements that use religious beliefs to justify what they do.
Yeah.
Sorry, I have to
Thank
go.
you.
But,
No, thank you so much for your wisdom and your participation today. That's why we have to go back to the source of Zionism, I think. As intellectuals, as the World Intellectual Forum, we need to unpick the thinking behind Zionism, which wasn't necessarily all bad, but it took a fatal turn somewhere. And I've been tracing that, in my studies. So look, I think we've come to the end. Sean, you had your hand up for ages. Do you want to make a final point? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, very briefly. Thanks, Nicolette and Thomas, for bringing in that. Maybe just an idea. Would you give us a summary of Gerard's ideas? Maybe the next time you said you started the book there. I've tried to look at that. I think he has something very important to say, but I can't. I think what you said there is very enlightening. So maybe
I'm going to read it before the next meeting. Okay.
Oh, yeah, that's. I just if you can come back and give us a summary.
I will. Yeah. Okay. Well, last round, go round. Just one last word. Thank you all for coming. It's been a very interesting discussion and a meeting. So, blessings. I hope no more tragic outbursts of nonsense happen. The thing about what Trump's up to, Steve Bannon, I think, is the mastermind. And he said his strategy is flood the zone with SHIT, because that keeps everyone so busy that they don't know what to do. And they don't notice when you're robbing the bank, so be aware of what the strategy is. And I think Amina's onto them, but don't let it paralyze us. We are the people on the job. Our attention, we're here as witnesses. And can I just say, the origin of the word martyr was a witness. We might be the martyrs. If Trump comes for anyone, he's going to come for us, right? Or Putin, if he conquers the whole of Europe. I think I'll be in the camps, but so be it. I'm a witness on the job. We all are. And that's what the word martyr actually means in Greek. I'm reading, by the way, a fantastic historical novel by Evelyn Waugh called Helena. It's a historical novel about Saint Helena, the mother of Constantine. And it's obviously, because not much is known about her, but he makes out she was a British princess, which is possible. And it's just so beautiful. I love this novel. It's like, when I was a kid, I read lots of historical novels because I think that it exercises the imagination and it teaches one empathy for the past, So I'll share the fruits of that as well when I finish the book, because Domitian is a bit of a naughty boy. He does lots of martyring of Christians, and he comes from Split, which is where one of our members is now resident in Croatia, who came to our last meeting, but not this one. Okay, look, thank you all for coming. Well, final last word. Priscilla, last statement. Let's go quickly round.
Let's keep hopeful.
Yeah, and we wanted to get back to you on peace education and this course, but maybe you can tell us next time.
Sure.
Because that's really important. How have you got the school governors to agree to that? Are you teaching it in school time or after class, after school?
It's actually after school, but it's a 4-course credit.
So there's a
and
motivation.
Next year we're going to be trying to get it during school time. It's right after school, so
So they come.
Yeah.
I used to do that in my schools. I used to run a philosophy club after school, and then we could.
This isn't a club; it's a 4-credit course, which is the difference. Yeah.
Good. Okay. Well done, Amina. Last words from you, madam.
Yes, thank you so much to everyone. Just a very interesting meeting. And Susan, Priscilla, actually, I'll be in touch with you. Very interested in the peace education piece that you were talking about. In fact, the DOP, one of the big part of the DOP is peace education. And if we did have a Department of Peace Building, it would be funding programs like you're doing, this department. And so I'm very interested to talk with you. Maybe I can replicate similar thing in California. But before I sign off, also just wanted to say that I got the beautiful book, both volumes, 1 and 2, the 99 Names of Peace from Thomas, volume 1 and 2. I love the way the artwork behind it, and of course I'm reading it. Just a wonderful book. I'll be reading it throughout Ramadan. Tomorrow's the first first day. We have the 99 names of God, if you know Allah.
Oh no,
So-
that's why I did
I
admit
figured.
it. Yeah.
I figured it's beautiful. So yeah, I'll just keep reading
Thank
that
you.
throughout Ramadan. Thank you for the
Yeah.
beautiful book.
No, thank you. I'm glad you've got the book. I mean,
Yes, it's on Lulu. I shared in a few of other DOP committee members. I believe they told me they were gonna
Yeah.
order it too. So
it took me a long time to write, 30 years to research. So,
it's heavy. It was a big box that
big book.
2 volumes.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you so much. Bharti, do you want to do some last words, final comments? You've listened.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. It was really very interesting discussion. And what I can say is let's move forward with the compassion, understanding, and commitment to dialogues, ensuring that love overcomes fear and unity prevails over divisions for a more peaceful world. So that's what the purpose of this discussion and this forum is. So
yeah,
this is my words from Bharti, Coordinator, World Intellectual Wisdom Forum, Youth and Educationing. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Bharti.
everybody.
Get well to India. Yeah.
Namaskar.
Tell them not to buy Israeli drone warfare weapons and spend it on peace education. Because there's billions of pounds going on weapons. It's ridiculous. James, do you want to add final thoughts?
Well, I just want to thank you very much for organizing this meeting. It's great to have somebody of your philosophical stature pulling us back to the philosophical side of life and conflict. I'm afraid I've been drawn too seriously now into thinking of or trying to find what you might call hot ways of dealing with the current conflict in Palestine. I've been looking at this, dealing with this for 60 years or more, and all the time I'm only able to comment, and criticize. I've written books about it, or pamphlets morally, particularly the Israeli crimes against the Palestinians, 9/11, the Israeli links, and now more recently, a book on Iran, which is the next target of the Israelis.
If we don't stop it, we've got to stop it. We can't, that would be a nightmare.
Well, it'll be worse than that. It'll be World War III, because China will come on board when Iran is attacked, because that's where they get their oil and other things from.
Right. I don't think let's pray the Israelis aren't that mad to attack Iran, because but no, we should maybe discuss that next meeting.
Yes, it would be good if we could.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you for all your work, James. And
thank you for all your references too.
Yeah. John, last words from Ireland.
Well, thanks everyone for their contributions. I'm sorry if I overstepped a few if I said too much, but I'm hopeful that this Chinese were saying crisis and opportunity. So we are in crisis now with Trump and with those, but there is opportunity there as well. So hopefully that's the positive contribution I want to make.
Yeah. Thank you. Nicolette, do you want to have a final word? From Athens, the mother home of democracy and philosophy.
Yes.
You are love to the Parthenon.
Thank you so much for doing this. It's inspiring. I mean, I read a lot and I try to share what I can to help you guys like the peace building.
Hold up the mic.
Sorry. I put Karuna Peace Building link in the chat for Priscilla.
Ah,
Yeah, it's something I did,
okay.
one of their webinars. I know what they do. Hate. Yeah, I mentioned about Veronica Escobar. She's my congressional rep.
Your sound is breaking up. But what I'll do, Nicolette, is I'm going to copy the chat before I shut the thing down, and then I can send it
Emailed
to
you. Can you hear me at least? I emailed you.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
good. Okay, well, look, right. So let's go and get on with the work. And thank you all for coming. So just to remind people, I'm doing these meetings every other month now, because next month will be for the arts. It's more focused on the Delphic Academy and, you know, bringing artists and performers together, because I think that's another way we can get this planet sorted. Beauty might be the answer. If we can get people to appreciate beauty through the arts. And then, so we'll meet as the World Intellectual Forum the month after. So our next meeting will be in April, therefore. This was the February meeting. So, you know, I'll send you all the link. Great. Okay, blessings. And let's pray that things get better. Yeah. Ciao.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
you guys
you.
go so I can then save the chat. You'll have to leave. Okay. I'm going to stay on. That's it.
Cheerio.
Take care.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.
See you.
Yeah. James, you can go.
I've tried to go.
Okay, don't worry. Stay on a bit then. Okay, he's gone. Right. There we are. Ah. Okay. Ah. Okay. This is wife. This is February. Right. That's good.